Okay.
Thanks very much, Chris. Okay, we have a number of items on today's finance agenda. This is the finance meeting of Tuesday, March 29th, 2022. It is 1:04 p.m. and we're live on a digital platform. I guess we best call the roll. Present here from Williamsport City Council, we have Council President Adam Yoder, myself, Liz Mealy from the Finance Committee, Randy Allison, and Eric Biter from the Finance Committee. I don't see anybody else in the cheap seats. From the administration, we have Mayor Derek Slaughter. We have Chief Snyder, Skip Remy from Community Development, Kayla Drummond from Recreation, Molly Steele Shrimp from HR, Joe Pavlok from Finance, and then we have Jen Dudek from Streets and Parks. Hi, Jen.
Hello, how are you?
Hi, very well. How are you?
All right.
Great. And we also have a number of other distinguished guest folks that will be interviewing for appointments and people here to support items on the agenda, and I'll let them introduce themselves as the items come up. Okay. All right. The first two items on our agenda actually are interviews for different city commissions or committees. And let me just go ahead and address this process right out of the gate. Commission and committee interviews are voted on. Most commission and committee interviews are voted on by the full body of council, whether they're a council appointment or a mayoral appointment. There are a handful of appointments that are appointed by the mayor with no council review, but anything reviewed by council, we determined a couple of years ago would begin with an interview process in one of the council subcommittees. That is a little less intimidating, I think, than going in front of the full body of council, and allows us to get to know the people serving on our boards and commissions. But there will be no vote, no passing along of this with a recommendation either way to the full body of council. This is just a conversation about, the qualifications of any new appointees, the experiences of any people being reappointed, et cetera, a bit of a discussion on the state of the city and the particular board or commission that the individual's being appointed to. So with that said, item number one is the appointment of Jennifer Dudek from Market Street. Jen, what's your address, just for the record?
633.
633 to the Ways Garden Commission.
Yeah.
For a lifetime term. I apologize. I actually wasn't aware that was a thing.
Yeah, I didn't know as well either. So there.
But
Okay.
I guess let me defer to the mayor here to explain that one and introduce you, Jen.
Good morning, Chairwoman Mealy and members of the Finance Committee. You do have Jen Dudek before you today for your consideration, as you said, to the Ways Garden Commission. And I believe, Councilwoman Mealy, majority of them on the Ways Garden are lifetime appointments. I'm just pulling that up now to see. Yes, all of them are lifetime actually appointments. The current board that we have, all of them are lifetime appointments. And so
That is a long time.
yes. I mean, obviously. Yeah. Of course, folks can step away from the board, obviously, which is the situation we're in today. With Jen filling this open spot that we have had on the Ways Garden Commission, I've talked to some folks on the Ways Garden Commission about filling this spot. As you all know, we have some boards and appointments open. Unfortunately, it would be nice if we had a waiting list. We do not. We still have other boards and seats open on other authorities and boards. So if folks are out there listening and interested, please submit your name. But we do appreciate very much so those that are willing to step up and volunteer their time on these boards and authorities, such as Ms. Dudek and the Kellers have done, and others that are serving currently. And so Jen is on, as you mentioned, Councilwoman Mealy. She is part of our Public Works Department. She is on Brandon Park and Shade Tree. She is a master gardener, and she stepped up with Ways Garden to offer her to volunteer on that commission as well. I think given that Ways Garden is a park of, some serenity and trees and garden and flowers. I think the skill set that Ms. Dudek brings would serve this commission well, especially seeing as she obviously is very vested into our parks and open spaces through the Streets and Parks Department, and being a master gardener. She's committed to maintaining, and beautifying our city, open and recreational and park spaces. And so with that, I submit her name for your consideration, and I just thank her once again for her willingness to serve in this capacity.
Excellent. Jen, did you have anything to add to that?
Oh, no, I also have a forestry degree as well, so we can add that one on too.
Sorry, yes, I apologize for that.
Yeah, I'm just very excited about this. I've known Carl and Paul for some time now. I'm in the park all the time in the summertime, mowing and taking care of everything. So I'm there on a weekly basis, seeing what needs done. And I care about our parks. It's what I do. It's something I'm passionate about, and I just hope I can do a good job for you.
Okay. Well, I'm sure that you will. We appreciate it. Randy and Eric, do you have any questions or any sort of discussion you'd like to start with Ms. Dudek?
I don't have any questions. I'd just like to thank Jen Dudek for stepping forward. I've gotten to know her a little bit over the past several months, and she's an integral part of our streets and park. But her expertise that she's going to bring to Ways Garden is like an added asset for the city, and definitely appreciate her being willing to give of her time to do that, because Ways Garden it's like an oasis in that part of the city, place to go and wait or whatever, just enjoy the beauty of the park itself, and the foresight that was planned for that park. I think we're continuing that on, so appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we all do, Jen. Eric, did you have any comments?
I do.
Right.
Sorry, I had to get myself unmuted there. Just so I have a little bit of clarity on this, Ms. Dudek, how long have you been employed by Streets and Parks?
March. Oh my gosh, I think this week was starting my 6th year.
6 years. Okay.
Yeah, started. I just finished up 5. Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, that's the only question I had. I mean, your qualifications are impeccable: master gardener, forestry degree, things like that. All things that are very necessary for those kinds of roles that you would play. But just more curious about the employment status. Thank you.
Yeah, well, and to echo what Mr. Biter, or to continue in Mr. Biter's line of thought, while I would agree that Jen is an excellent appointment to this board and very well qualified, I do think, Mayor, that it might behoove us to put some thought into a policy regarding the appointment of city employees to boards and commissions within the city, something along those lines. There is, I mean, as we know, there's the potential for a city employee to feel compromised in terms of expressing their point of view, if there were ever any sort of contentious issue on one of the boards or commissions. I think that's relatively unlikely on both of the boards and on both of the commissions. Oh, well, I've just been talking away over here. Sorry, and I didn't realize I was muted.
Just for a second there, Liz.
Oh, okay. But I do think that we should, if nothing else, try and clear up the employees' responsibilities to the city versus the employees' responsibilities to the boards and commissions. Do you understand what I'm saying? So that employees who might be serving on boards and commissions, if we're going to do that, know that they are able to speak freely and form their own opinions when
That's for me.
What's that? Oh, well, yeah, no, exactly, Jen. I know it would be a problem for you. One of the reasons I'm comfortable with this. But you know, I think that if the city is going to make it even remotely common practice to appoint an employee to an independent board or commission, we should have a way to sort of safeguard that employee from ever feeling like they're caught in the middle of a disagreement between a board or commission and the city. Because it would be a shame, and it would be a shameful position to put one of our employees in. So, I would encourage the administration to begin thinking about what mechanism we could utilize to make sure that we don't do that accidentally to anyone who works for us. But that said, we are unlikely to find anyone, I think, better qualified to advise Waste Garden. I suppose the other thing that might be worth looking at is it's probably not unwise to institute term limits for the Waste Garden Commission, Mayor Slaughter. I don't think there's any other commission in the city where we have that as a practice. And not that it needs to happen immediately, but it might not be a bad idea to change that. You are welcome to serve for the rest of your life, Jen.
That's all I got.
I think it would still be wise if we reappointed you time to time. Maybe not term, just periods that people serve for, so that every 5 years or something like that, it comes up for review, and they have the opportunity to say, you know what, I think I'm done. Time for something.
Right.
Wasn't that a stipulation in the original charter of the Waste Garden?
What, the lifetime appointments?
Yeah.
It appears that it is, right? Well, it appears, is it a stipulation that you're saying that it's a stipulation in the charter that we cannot change?
That's just a legal question I have. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we should look into it. Because if it is that.
Can I chime in and answer?
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah, it's in our ordinance. It hasn't been changed in, I don't know, 100 years, but all the other commissions have been. So it has to be changed by ordinance, and it can be changed by council.
Okay.
Is that an ordinance related to the chart? Is that in the charter, or is that something that the city?
It's something that's something the city did.
Okay.
Well, perhaps actually, maybe we should ask Norm just to double check. I think Norm's pretty familiar with that charter, right, Randy?
Yep.
Seems to. So maybe we can ask him on Thursday just to clarify whether or not that. Because like I said, I think the concept of reviewing your appointments periodically is wise. But if it's in the charter and we can't figure out a way to skirt around it, that'll be interesting indeed. But it seems as though most of our members have simply chosen to bow out as necessary. And I'm assuming that we have a removal clause somehow, if we were ever to have an issue where we actually actively wanted to remove someone from the commission. Sure. But that said, I think the idea of terms is wiser and has worked better in practice for pretty much every government up and down the board, from the smallest to the largest. You want to have terms. Lifetime appointments don't work out no matter how big or how small you are.
Just for the Waste Garden in the Supreme Court. That's all.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's some value to the unimpeachable, unremovable thing, I think, Supreme Court. But Jen's really going to get into a rock and a hard place between the union and the Waste Garden Commission here.
I hope not.
But anyway, all of that said, Jen, you don't need to attend the council meeting on Thursday, although of course you're more than welcome to if you'd like to. We'll represent your appearance today at the finance committee meeting to the full body of council.
I think I'm going because we're doing presenting the resolution for the benches at Brandon.
Okay, well that's good. So then we'll see you one way or the other, and everybody.
Yeah, right, correct.
I guess the only other question that I would ask you is, what do you think that we should be working on in Waste Garden? We accomplished a handful of things. We had sort of a master plan that we developed there, and some of it's been implemented and some of it hasn't. And I think some of it was a little bit pie in the sky anyway, perhaps. But what do you think that we need to work on? What do you think the park needs?
It's just a lot of the finishing updates of like the fence and then the driveway or the parking lot that they sort of put in. I know that needs refined a bit. last summer, I know we had a problem with a lot of the homeless people hanging out there and just camping out on the pavilion for hours and hours, and actually using the park as a bathroom, which I found so totally disturbing right in the middle of the day. Because they come out of the mission and then they hang out all day. And I think a lot of people didn't want to go because of it. They just walked right through. And of course, I always want to see more trees and more plants added. And of course, I do believe the sidewalk out front along the streets really does need fixed. That needs addressed in a big way. And other than that, there's always room for improvements. And with any garden, if you're finished, then you quit. You should always be updating.
I think that's certainly true. And Ways Garden, I think, certainly needs to be a showpiece for the historic district. So to the extent that we can do that and bear in mind its sort of historic roots, I suppose we are best off. But yeah, no, those are all good ideas. And we've been hearing about the need to redo the sidewalk. So I'm kind of hoping we can put it off till autumn and just keep the shade trees for the summer. But either way, it clearly needs to happen.
Right.
Okay. All right. Is there anything further from anyone else?
No.
Okay. No, Randy? Okay. Then in that case, thanks very much for coming today, Jen. And I guess we'll see you Thursday.
I'll be there Thursday. Thank you so much. I'm homesick, so I'm gonna log off.
Okay.
Right now, if that's all right with you.
No, I think that's a good idea. I wouldn't stick around if I were you.
All right.
All right.
Thank you. I'll see you Thursday.
All right. Bye-bye. Okay. All right. Moving on then to the next agenda item number 2, are 2 appointments to the HARB board. Darlene Kellers and Fred Kellers, both residing at 915 West 4th Street. And this is being presented by Council President Adam Yoder. Mr. Yoder?
Thanks, Liz. Good afternoon, everyone. So in front of you, you have 2 individuals for appointment to the HARB board, Darlene and Fred Kellers. So they had reached out to our community development office and expressed their interest in getting involved and formally serving on the HARB board. I think both are great candidates. They have a really good passion for history and specifically historic preservation. And from what I understand, have done some work on their own, both locally and I think prior to living in Williamsport. And I think that combined with, some of their personal experience, I think they'll be good additions, bringing some fresh perspective to the HARB board. So we're certainly excited to have them here. I'll let Skip chime in if there's anything else to add from community development's perspective, and then certainly turn it back over to the Kellers and let them expand on anything they wish to expand on.
Good afternoon, everybody. I believe President Yoder covered it really well. The Kellers have been very interested in serving on this committee and have reached out multiple times to see if there was any other information we needed to present to council. They're anxious to be part of the community, and we're looking forward to having them on the HARB board. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mimmy, real quick before we hear from the Kellers, can you talk to me a little bit about the membership on the HARB board and if we're still needing any members if we appoint both Mr. and Mrs. Kellers?
Councilwoman Maley, I believe this fills out the board. The board is made up of 11 individuals, and with these 2 spots filled, I think we have all 11 positions filled at this point in time.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Then Mr. and Mrs. Kellers, what can you tell us about your interest in serving on HARB?
Since we've moved to the area, we've only been here since June, and we're trying to jump right in and look around us and see what we can improve, not only on our home, which has already been restored, fabulously, and also we're looking around and seeing what else we can do to, help restore and refurbish the entire historic district of Williamsport. Trying to get it back to its glory days and, what it was, and do every bit we can to do that. So, sometimes we look around and, if we've probably bugged Chelsea, we were working with her a lot. And if we saw some things that we thought could be improved, we'd reach out to her and ask her what we could do to help. And, just anything we could do to improve the area for everybody, involved, because, it's something that we see people walking up and down and looking at the homes. And so we thought, whatever we could do to improve the entire area and help out in Williamsport any way we can. In fact, we started helping to volunteer at the gardens, the Wade's Garden. So we've been helping Carl to, go and do whatever's needed there. So we're interested in the entire area, and we're trying to do what we can to restore it and keep it and volunteer in every way we can.
Okay. Well, that's great. So welcome to Williamsport.
Oh.
And you own the home at 915 West 4th?
Yeah, we do. And that's, we moved all the way here from Colorado based on, our love of historic homes and history. And so we found this home and, researched the area and, made the move without even stepping foot in it. The previous owner did a Skype for us and walked through it. And so, and when we arrived, it was better than what we even thought. So we're glad to be here.
Great. Well, yeah, it's a beautiful house and nicely located too.
Yeah.
Right next to a coffee shop and all is a
Yeah.
good location.
Yes.
Randy and Eric, do you have any questions for the Kellers?
I'll let Eric go first since I jumped in last time.
No, that's quite all right. But I do not have any questions at this time, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, I don't have any particular questions. I'd just be interested as you get more involved with the board to hear your take on things, or even right now, if you have a perception of the state of the historical district there. You mentioned, that you observe a lot what's going on, and which you, especially coming in from the outside, because the rest of us are, a lot of us have lived in the city all our lives, so we're kind of used to it. But like,
yeah.
Well, one thing I'd like to say is I think Williamsport hasn't played up enough as far as the tourism aspect of Millionaires Row, because when we were considering making an offer on this home and we looked at the information, speaking about the lumber barons and the history of this particular street and this particular area, I think more can be done in the aspect of improvement and refurbishing and kind of revitalizing this area. Because I think a lot of people probably would come here to view these homes, and just the history involved with it is very interesting, but I just don't think it's been used to the advantage that it could be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah, I can see that. Absolutely. I mean, we've talked about we talked about in the context of marketing the whole area, and that historic district's absolutely a important component of that.
And I think to play off of that, Randy, we get, or at least because my family's always been pretty heavily involved in the historic district, we get a lot of feedback from people who are traveling with how impressed they are with the homes. And as we know, much of the district could use, has plenty of room for improvement. It's not that the homes aren't lovely, but we could do better. And And I think it is an asset that we could be taking better advantage of. So that's, I think to your point, Randy, it is, or I believe that it will be exciting to have some energy on Harb from people who haven't lived in the city for a long time, who bring new ideas and fresh ideas from other places they've been. Are you two aware, I guess, of the primary role of Harb so far, which is not to say that perhaps it's the singular role that it can fill, but that it approves applications to make modifications to the exterior of properties within the district. And that it is all a quasi-legal board. You know, the opinions of Harb carry quite a bit of weight, which is why we strive to appoint people who are familiar with Victorian architecture, familiar with some of the styles and elements of Victorian architecture, so that they have so that, you know, our board continues as a body to have a good understanding of what adds character to the historic district and what might be able to be changed without damaging, you know, the sort of reputation of the district. You've discussed that with the administration or with other members of Harb?
Well, when we've had to do a few things here on our own home, and so we've gone through that process to get a backyard fence approved and so forth. And you know, we would like to implement more of the traditional, when people want to get paint colors approved, kind of stick with more the traditional Victorian period approved colors, and even with the landscape and so forth, to kind of be true to that period. And we owned a 1920s craftsman home in Colorado that was on the National Historic Registry. And that's a different period, but we kind of had to work with them for different things that we wanted to do with the home. And so we've kind of gone through that process on that end, but not on the end that we are now, you know, wanting to be appointed to. But yeah.
Yeah, and we kind of got, that's how we kind of got started being involved with it more. And we noticed there was a home that, you know, they spent a lot of time painting it very close to us. You know, I won't mention any address because I think there's things ongoing with it, but we noticed that the colors, you know, were not historical, and that's not what you know they would have done. It wasn't period, and it just didn't fit with the neighborhood. And so I had a number of discussions, and in fact, some of the Harb members didn't even, I guess the homeowner was supposed to notify Harb that, you know, in the process of it, and say, you know, we've got our colors on, our primary colors, can you come and approve? And anyway, the entire home was painted, and now it's a big issue because it's got like 8 colors of, so anyway, we just got involved with that, and that's kind of, you know, where we started with this process.
Okay. Well, you guys really are jumping right in, aren't you? Well, that's fantastic. Randy and Eric, did this discussion so far stir any other questions or comments from either of you?
I don't have any other questions or comments. No, just for volunteering your time.
Yeah, that's exciting. This is something that I don't know that I've ever seen happen before. While I've been on council, appointing both a husband and wife to a board. But that said, I think, well, I mean, given the vacancies that we have on the board, and given, you know, your clear interest and the fact that the board itself is so large that 2 people don't necessarily carry a weight to carry the majority, I don't think it's a problem. So as we said to Ms. Dudek, it won't be at all necessary for you to attend the council meeting on Thursday evening. If you would like to, you are more than welcome to. And Janice, correct me if I'm wrong, if you're planning to be at the meeting on Thursday, and assuming that the vote goes in favor of appointing both Darlene and Fred to the board, they could be sworn in on Thursday, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So if you'd like to attend on Thursday, you could be sworn in on site while you were at the meeting. But if you don't want to, you can always be sworn in the city clerk's office, assuming that you're approved at any other point while she's in the office, which is pretty frequently nowadays. Wasn't there for a couple of years, huh, Janice? But yeah, so we'll leave that up to you. But this, I think, unless you have any other points to make, the two of you can conclude our conversation, and we'll represent what you said to us to the full body of council on Thursday.
Right.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate your time today.
Mhm.
Okay. Goodbye. All right. Moving right along, kind of. We'll move on to item number 3, Mistress Slaughter, a resolution, or Mayor Slaughter, excuse me, a resolution accepting a donation for work to be completed by the Walsh Career and Technical Education.
Yes.
Is that supposed to be WAHS?
Yeah, it's supposed to be WAHS. Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. It's just
Yep,
read
right. Yeah, it's Williamsport High School. So yes, good afternoon again, Councilwoman Melian, members of Finance. Before you for your consideration is a resolution accepting a donation for work to be completed by the Williamsport High School Career and Technical Education construction students, obviously with support from their instructors as well, and from my understanding, even a few who are retired instructors also. I guess maybe a month or so ago, Mr. Randy Williamson from the high school, he's the high school's construction teacher, reached out to me. They were applying for a grant and they really wanted it to benefit the city in some way if they were to receive the grant. And so I reached out to Scott Livermore, and then we were in an email chain with Mr. Williamson as well. The grant was $5,000, and Mr. Williamson asked us to identify somewhere that would be able to handle, it's not a large grant, obviously, but where they can make a little bit of a difference, actually a pretty big difference. And so anyway, they applied for the grant and they received it. And so Mr. Livermore, Mr. Williamson, and the students went out to Brandon Park and identified a few areas where they can make some improvements. The dugout, the bathhouse, some concrete work in anticipation for the benches. And so they're looking to do this work in April, I believe, mid-April. We're working on those dates right now, coordinating that. Mr. Livermore and Mr. Williamson are coordinating that. And so this is no cost to the city. This is a completely, everything is being handled by the grant, and the students and the staff are donating their time to make our city a little bit better. And so that's what you have before you. So this is simply just an accepting of their generous donation and the grant that they went after on behalf of the city, basically.
That's great. Derek, I don't know if we have it at this point, but I'm assuming that we should have a contract of sorts holding us harmless if there were any harm to come to members of the school, students or staff, all that. Do we have anything like that?
I ran this by Austin and he said this was all that we needed, but I can double check with him on that as far as if we need like a certificate of insurance or something along those lines.
Hold harmless. I don't know. I'm just trying to, usually we see something like that when we see an agreement to take, to take the work product of someone else, that, we hold them harmless in the event of a issue with workmanship. I don't know, you know what I mean? Or whether, all that stuff. just in case anything were either come of the work product or happen to someone during the work period, so that we know who's responsible. So I guess if you want to check with Austin and make sure that that's not necessary, that we have some existing relationship that determines that, that'd be good. Other questions from other members of the Finance Committee?
That was my question as well. So, that's all.
Yep, I will check with Austin and get an answer to that prior to Thursday.
Got it. Great. Eric, anything from you?
I have none.
All right, great. Then I would take a motion.
I'll make a motion to pass it to full body council with positive recommendation.
And I will second that motion.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, sounds great. Thanks, Derek. Yeah, please look into that. But aside from that, it looks great. And it's certainly exciting to be getting a donation from the school district of both labor and grant funds. Very exciting. All right, moving on then to our next agenda item, a resolution awarding a contract to UHY Advisors for ARPA Plan Act compliance and oversight. Mr. Slaughter?
Yes,
Mayor
good afternoon. Yep, good afternoon. Once again, before you for your consideration is a resolution awarding the contract to UHY Advisors for our American Rescue Plan compliance and oversight. UHY Advisors provides compliance and oversight to a number of cities, both large and small and everything in between, related to rescue plan. And they've done audits as well and auditing. They responded to our RFP, and they are, of course, qualified and certified to perform these duties. This would be for a total of 3 years at $85,000 per year, equate to a grand total of $255,000 with the services that they would provide related to our compliance and oversight. Of course, we've been talking about this for a while now, related to our rescue plan funding and getting a firm in place that would handle the compliance, that would handle the reporting, that would handle the oversight, and all matters really related to our rescue plan funding moving forward. And so, UHY, speaking with them and looking at their proposal, we were very excited with the experience they had, with the cost, and with the services that they are able to provide the city, obviously pending council approval. We do have a representative here today from UHY Advisors that can answer any questions related to the resolution. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Slaughter. Would the representative, is it Mr. Regan?
Yep.
Regan, would you like to
Just
address?
Jack. You can go with just Jack.
Okay, hey Jack. Is there anything that you'd like to address before we take questions from the other members of the committee?
Sure. I mean, I'll just give you a little bit of a background on our firm and on me personally as well. We appreciate the opportunity to speak to the committee today. Again, my name is Jack Regan. I'm a managing director with UHY. I'm in our Columbia, Maryland office. I lead our state and local government audit and consulting practice nationally, and I'm a member of the UHY Management Committee. UHY, depending on the day and the metric, because we are an accounting firm, we can slice it and dice it however you want. We're the 29th largest accounting firm in the United States. We have 25 offices. Based on an email I got from our chief operating officer yesterday, we're over 1,400 employees nationwide, did $220 million worth of revenues last year. We'll probably do $250 million this year. As the mayor said, audit tax consulting firm. Me personally, I've been at this now 33 years. I come by governmental accounting, auditing, and consulting very honestly. My father was a career federal and government employee, and my mom actually was a grant accountant for Loudoun County's Department of Mental Health, Mental Retardation, and Substance Abuse Services, which is where I grew up and where I currently live. I live about 10 miles from where I grew up. So I like to say I came a short way in a long time. We're serving a bunch of American Rescue Plan Act clients throughout the United States, including Now it will be 3 in Pennsylvania. We're serving the city of Chester, and we're serving Upper Darby Township as well. And the typical engagements that we've seen fall into 3 phases. First phase is where the government determines its strategy for spending these ARPA funds. There's an element of community engagement where there can be surveys, listening tours, whatever you want to call them, to gather feedback from the public about where priority spending areas should be. We work with then the elected officials and municipal staff to align those operational areas where the public is seeing money that wants spent with your operating budget priorities and your capital budget priorities, to develop a set of guiding principles against which all the applications are filtered to determine which ones assist the government in evaluating whether or not those should be funded. I like a 2-step process where the projects come in, we review at UHY for allowability. So then the selection committee, we'll call it, is only evaluating those projects which have been determined to be ARPA allowable, and you're not having to worry about spending time on a project that's so out of left field it's not allowable. Once the projects are approved, we work with staff to make sure that all of the contracts that you have with the project owners include all of the information that the city is going to need on those projects to file with the United States Treasury on a quarterly basis. Every project where you spend over $50,000 has certain financial and in some cases non-financial measures that have to be reported to the Treasury on a quarterly basis. And then so that we make sure the contracts are aligned. We then do the monitoring. We will do monitoring of the expenditures that are going on the projects. Depending on the risk associated with the project, we may do a lot of monitoring. We may go out and do physical site visits to the locations. Others, we may do just some desk reviews where we'll look at the documentation that comes in as a request for reimbursement. Then finally, and that's our monitoring phase. The last phase is the transparency phase, where we will assist you in making your quarterly filings to the United States Treasury. The first one is going to be due, or the next one that's coming up is due on April 30th for the quarter ended March 31st. And we will also assist city staff with developing regular reports to come to the elected officials, whether that be monthly or quarterly, whatever cadence you want on that, so that you can exercise your fiduciary responsibilities to oversee how the spending is going. And then finally, we'll also work with you to design some reports that can be demonstrated and shown to the public, so they know how effectively the ARPA monies are being stewarded. Again, we're doing this for entities as large as the city of Detroit, which is getting $825 million, and doing as well for Colchester, Connecticut, that's getting a little bit over 6 million. I guess you guys are right around 40 million, if I'm remembering correctly, which is comparable to what Upper Darby Township and Chester are doing. I've got a team now of almost a dozen people that are helping me do this. I've built my own little fiefdom on this one of experts that are doing this 24/7. And, in conclusion, I'll just tell you, I have been doing this for 33 years, working with governments. 32 of them, I've been going like this as an auditor. And in this last year, as a consultant, I've been able to say, here, let me help you with these projects that can be transformational to the communities, provided that they are stewarded the right way. And I think that's the value proposition that UHY brings. And on a personal note, the last year has been the most fun and the most professionally rewarding year of my professional career. And UHY would definitely welcome the opportunity to serve the city. As I told the mayor, As I was building this practice or this service offering, one of the first ones we won was Bristol, Connecticut, home of ESPN. And I bid on that one because we have an office right next door to it, but it's Bristol, Connecticut, home of ESPN, which is, kind of cool for me as a sports fan, as you can see over my shoulders here. When I saw your RFP come out, I was terribly excited because, I'm a baseball dad and a softball dad. And I firmly believe that Williamsport, Pennsylvania is part of the fabric of the United States culture. And, personally and professionally, it would truly be an honor for me to serve the city of Williamsport. So hope we get the opportunity to do so, and I'll entertain any questions you guys may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Randy and Eric, what questions do you have?
I just appreciate you being here, and also looking over the document that we got. It's dense with a lot of information and detail, so it's going to take me a while to assimilate all of that. But the things I did see were, I just was very impressed with all that attention to detail and your experience. I guess my initial question is, we started our own internal process. So we kind of maybe got the cart before the horse a little bit with some of the structure that you have in place, like originally engaging us before starting all of that. So how are we going to navigate that? We haven't spent a lot of money yet.
Right.
We've been careful about that, but we had areas. So I kind of want to know how much of a reset should we have to really do this right? Because I think that's been our goal, administration and council all along. We want to get this right.
Yep.
We want to spend the money wisely and appropriately, and everything down the line that you've already mentioned. But that would be my initial question.
Yeah, and Randy, you're not different than a lot of the other localities that we have begun to work with over the past year, where some of the projects there has been a commitment from city management as well as the elected officials to fund those projects, and the funding has gone on and some of the spending has occurred before we've gotten engaged. What we do in those cases is go back, review any of the contracts that have been awarded. We will prepare supplemental documentation just to put, for me, on top of the file that says, hey, we've read the scope of work. This is allowable under such and such a section of the final rule. And then here is the federal expenditure category that the project needs to be reported up to Treasury on. So we're not recreating the wheel for anything that has occurred beforehand. The biggest thing that we've seen in instances where there have been some projects that have been approved prior to our starting is in certain instances, the reporting requirements from the project owner to the city haven't been as robust as they need to be because there are certain financial measures and non-financial measures for certain projects that the project owner will need to give to the city so the city can give them to Treasury. And what we do there is we come back with, hey, here are some changes that we would recommend as an addendum to that contract that you need to get to make sure that that contractor is on the hook, whether the contractor is a business or a nonprofit or whomever it is, so that they're on the hook for getting you the information that you need to get to Treasury. The worst case scenario is that you've got a piece of information that you need to report to Treasury, and you go to try and get it from the organization and they say, not in my contract, don't have to give it to you. And then you have to jump through those contracting hoops. That's why I really like trying to get engaged as quickly as we can at the front end to make sure, because the easiest time to get that information in the contract is up front, so you don't have to get a second bite at the apple on that. So the mayor has shared with me a couple of the projects around the body cameras and some of the other ideas for projects out there. Certainly, those are all allowable that I've seen so far, and we will work with the mayor and staff to review any of those projects, look at the agreements that are out there, make sure that all the required information is included. And then once we see sort of what your process has been, if we find anything that we feel on a prospective basis could be improved, I'm not shy. I certainly will feel comfortable making any sort of recommendations on a go forward basis. The beauty of all this, Randy, is y'all got until 2024, the end of 2024 to commit to spending, and the end of 2026 to actually spend it all down. So whatever we've done to date, if there's anything that can be tweaked or improved, we got time. So we've always got that ability.
Yeah, and that is a godsend, I think, in this whole process. And as I read through as much as I could get, because I wanted to take my time, but for instance, on page 17, it's under approach. It has a whole list of things that you can assist the city in. And I see things in there that will help us in ways beyond the ARPA projects and everything. You're very diversified in your expertise and areas to lead us into, and that's something. And I'm glad to hear you say you're not shy about speaking up, because we want to get the news as quickly as possible, good or bad, so that we can make the right decisions. But it just, as that, the more I read, the more I felt like we really need to get the most out of our relationship with you. I like that you mentioned it's not a one-way street. You look at it as a partnership, a cooperative thing. And I think that's exactly what we're looking for. So.
Well, and I, in full disclosure, I did do my research on the city, did a nice media search and all that before we decided to throw in the response. I do understand some of the financial management struggles that have occurred at the city over the years, and that the city is still recovering from. I am used to operating in that kind of environment where the internal control environment is in a state of flux. It's something I certainly feel very comfortable in, and making recommendations. Just by way of reference, I audited and was the auditor off and on for the past 25 years for Washington, D.C. So I was there when the city was nearly bankrupt, got taken over by Congress from a financial management standpoint, and we helped them to reestablish a lot of their basic financial accounting controls to where now it's an extraordinarily well-run city from a financial management standpoint. So I'm very comfortable working in an environment collaboratively to help help improve the control environment. And you've got a unique opportunity with these ARPA funds. These one-time, a generational amount of money that you've got, that you can demonstrate your effective stewardship of these funds, as you are transforming internally as well. And you can use, and we will certainly make sure as we are doing our work, if we see policies, procedures, other things like that in payroll, in procurement, in payables, in monthly reconciliations, to make sure that we identify any of those control weaknesses, in addition to your outside auditors, who are a tremendous firm. They're extraordinarily well respected in the governmental accounting and auditing community. Was another reason why I was comfortable taking on the engagement, was the outside accounting firm that you've engaged to do your work. We'll walk down the street with you as you're working through this improvement, and I hope. And I was talking to the mayor. One of the things that I like doing on these projects are taking some before and after pictures.
Yeah.
Of these projects, so you can see, hey, here's what it looked like before. Right. And then here's now that we're putting this investment in, look at what things look like afterwards. And that can help tell that story of how well you've administered these funds. I think we're going to be able to paint a very nice picture as well from a financial management standpoint, that you got this $40 million influx of money, and here's how well you were able to manage it. How well you were able to manage it. I hope we get a chance to be a part of that.
Looking forward to that as well. I don't want to take up any more time because there's other questions but I did notice that you have quite a diverse group within the company, and the one you partner with Meridian. And
Meridian, yep.
I like having different points of view and people bringing different things to the table. I think that makes it strong. Okay.
Randy, one of the best things about the waning of the pandemic and getting back into the office and getting normal again is that we get to have our quarterly potluck lunches where I've got, I think, over a dozen countries represented in our staff and management pool at our offices. And it's awesome. It is like a Thanksgiving feast anytime we have that, but we're very proud of the diversity that we bring to the table. And Meridian is an integral teaming partner and all that. Tony Scott and his firm I've dealt with for going on 10 years now. And he is, he's like a brother to me now. So, appreciate your noticing that we brought that to the table.
Certainly. Thank you. I'll turn it back. Chairwoman Mealy.
Sure. Mr. Biter, I'd imagine you have questions as well.
I do have a question, just really more of a statement in general, but about what Randy had already mentioned. We already are on this process. We've had some funds already allocated. We've had some conflicting statements made by different individuals, whether we had to put something through unrestricted funds or whether we could pay for it through ARPA funds. So really my concern is that we don't get too far down this road because we've committed roughly $4 million of this money already to public safety. And that's going to really change our plans if we have to pivot and put that through the unrestricted portion of these funds.
Oh, no.
So that's a big concern.
Public safety, you're good. There's no doubt that body cameras, the other technology purchases that you've got are fully allowable under ARPA. Now, one of the things that you will need to do, in my opinion, for good financial management, spent a little bit of time talking to the mayor about this, is under the final rule that was issued in January. It gives the city considerable flexibility in the way that it evaluates what's called revenue loss. There's a pretty intense calculation that the city can go through to calculate its estimate of what revenue loss will be through 12/31/2024. If that number is in excess of $10 million, you can take actual revenue loss. If that number estimate is less than 10 million, you still get that $10 million standard exemption, I'll call it, as revenue loss. The only things you're not allowed to spend that $10 million or any of the money that you take as revenue loss on, it basically becomes city general fund money. So you move it out of where it is now over into the general fund. And the only four things you're not allowed to use it for: tax relief, debt service, claims and judgments, and pension and post-retirement healthcare contributions. That's it. That's the list. So you've got considerable flexibility. And what I've encouraged my clients to do is to take the maximum amount that they're allowed to take as revenue loss, because that gives you significantly more flexibility and removes some of the administrative requirements that you have under the American Rescue Plan Act for reporting up to Treasury with those monies. For some of my clients, they're estimating only 11 or $12 million in revenue loss. And I'm like, look, just take the 10 million, just take it. Don't even worry about it. That gives you the maximum amount of flexibility of having those funds be unrestricted, except for those four areas that I just talked about. So we'll work with the city to go through its revenue loss calculation to do that. But one of the things that you need to do is to have 20 and 21 and 22 audited numbers. So closing out some of those back audits, which I know are still in process, will become very critical to the effective administration of the spending of your ARPA funds. The compliance we're going to help you maintain regardless of which bucket it's going in. We're going to monitor these projects that you're using this money for, but that extra step of whether it needs to be reported to Treasury will need to lock down by getting these the revenue loss numbers nailed down, which means you got to get the old audits done.
And
Sure, but I apologize if I may have phrased this incorrectly. I understand the thing with the buckets as far as lost revenue is concerned. My concern is we are planning on taking roughly $3 million, not from lost revenue, to pay for fire trucks, for example.
Yep.
That's where we want to make sure we're not crossing the line, we're not doing anything incorrect.
Yep.
Because we do not want to move that into lost revenue. We have other plans that we've discussed for lost
Gotcha.
revenue and things like that.
Yep. And we'll look at the way that agreement is structured and get it into a place where it's allowable under ARPA. We'll help you with that documentation to make sure that there's no questions asked on that.
That's what we need. Thank you very much.
I think the mayor was raising his hand.
Yep. Derek?
And if I may, just a quick minute to elaborate a little bit on what Mr. Reagan was saying. So we have the 10 million, and as soon as Zelenkowski, and they're working through right now, obviously, we can exceed that 10 million. We just, as soon as we get that, I should say we could potentially exceed the 10 million. And as soon as we get that sort of baseline data from Zelenkowski, that'll show us, I believe it's a 5.2%, Mr. Regan, is what the Treasury is allowing us to use as that percentage. Then, so the quote unquote unrestricted, and a number of municipalities actually are getting almost to their full amount of ARPA funds as being unrestricted. But what the Treasury said is go ahead and start with 10 million, but you most likely will be able to exceed that amount once we most likely will be able to exceed that amount once we have the baseline information from Zelenkowski. So we're probably, and obviously Mr. Regan, as to Councilman Ryder's point, will review all of this and make sure, moving forward, it's all squared away. But which is nice. Obviously, we've been looking forward to this. But it's kind of optimistic that we will probably have a significant amount of more money that will be able to be unrestricted.
Good. Yeah. I mean, I think that's probably in some ways the best case scenario. Although, of course, if it means that we've lost that much revenue, in some ways, that's also a negative scenario.
Yeah, it's a blessing and a curse.
Right. I mean, as long as we are quickly turning around to make that revenue back up, I suppose it's not the end of the world, but the idea that the idea that we would turn out to have actually lost 20 million in revenue over the course of a handful of years during and post-pandemic is striking, and in some ways to me would actually be worse than the opposite, us utilizing that $10 million number and then having $15 million that we really likely would never have had otherwise to spend. But be that as it may, I think that's a good observation, and obviously unrestricted funding is helpful. Did I understand, Mr. Reagan, from your summary that we have been told in the past, and maybe this is old data and I'm just misremembering, that we couldn't utilize ARPA funds even within that lost revenue category to do things like infrastructure, fixing streets, et cetera. But it sounds as though that is a possibility.
I think that is a possibility. It's a government service.
Right.
So that is, you're restricted to only being able to use it for government services other than those 4 areas that I highlighted. I will tell you that a lot of folks out are trying to minimize the amount of money that they're using for those sort of infrastructure projects that are not water, not wastewater, not broadband, not sewer, which are explicitly allowable under ARPA, because they're waiting to see what's going to happen with the infrastructure bill and that act and what monies are going to be coming down. So they're sort of slow walking any of those infrastructure projects forward unless something's like falling in on something. They're holding off on doing that until they get some clarity as to what's coming in under the Infrastructure Act.
Yeah, I think that would clearly make the most sense. I guess part of what I was thinking, and it's not likely necessarily that Williamsport will find themselves with leftover funds at the end of 2024 that have yet to be allocated. But I noticed a sentence a little ways down, I think around page 23 or 24 in your document, that said that we could sort of, after the fact, allocate ARPA funds as a source for projects that we completed, or at least it appeared to me that was what it said.
Yeah, you can go back to March the 3rd of 2021 and grab costs that are allowable under the act. So, if you go through, let's say you're at the end of 2023 and you've got some money left over on things, you can go back as far as March the 3rd of 2021 and find costs that haven't otherwise been reimbursed that are allowable under ARPA and take those as reimbursement for those expenses.
So we don't sort of have to have called out prior to beginning the project that we're utilizing ARPA funds for it in order to utilize ARPA funds. That's excellent. One more real basic procedural question. The city, as well as I'm assuming 99% of the municipalities you've worked with, receives funds from HUD, Community Development Block Grant funding. We also liquid fuels funds from the state. To what extent is your firm familiar with the restrictions based on those funds? And I guess we've had over even the past couple of weeks debates about what to take from ARPA funding versus what to utilize community development funding for. And it would certainly be advantageous to us to have a firm that was familiar with both funds and what might make the best sense.
Familiar with all of those?
Okay.
So yeah, so we're familiar with CDBG and any of the other restricted types of funds. ARPA, generally speaking, is less restrictive than most of your other grant funds, and especially CDBG. So you're going to want to spend, to me, your most restricted money first, and then get over into spending on the ARPA funds. One of the things that we're also helping folks look at as well, and I talk about having some levers, especially if you're going into capital projects. A lot of my clients are going into their capital projects budgets, or the capital projects that aren't in their capital projects budgets right now that they're on their wish list, and sort of looking at, what makes sense to move around from a capital budget over into ARPA so that it frees up money in the capital budget for these other projects that would like to be done. It looks like we may be heading into a more inflationary environment. So bonding those capital projects today and locking in some of those lower rates is probably more advantageous to do. So we really need to look at what levers we can pull around ARPA versus capital budget to see where it makes the most sense to fund those projects.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's a lot of our question. We're contemplating a handful of things. I mean, frankly, I'm not sure that there was much that was funded in our capital budget. I think most of our capital budget could be considered a wish list. So from that perspective, ARPA is a true godsend. But thank you for the term, Mr. Allison. But that said, there are areas in which we could hope to utilize other funding, even potentially infrastructure funding, things like the levee work that the city needs to accomplish over the next couple of years, some stormwater infrastructure items that we need to take care of in the north of the city. And so trying to figure out whether I think part of our gamble is, are we likely to find funding for this elsewhere, or do we need to send it through ARPA because we're, the likelihood of succeeding in accessing other funding is slim. And then there are a handful of things. You're right. There is the idea of interest rates being lower now than they will be. So to what extent should we be prepared to take on more debt now, just so that we can save ourselves money in the long run? And this is not the time or the place for that conversation, but I would look forward to having a conversation with you in some more depth about that, because that, I think, something that we definitely need to consider right now. And my other question escaped my head. As you probably noticed, looking over the budget, the sort of the opening budget that we set up for our ARPA allocation, we were committing a good portion of the funding to economic development, in hopes, of course, that we could grow our tax base and make ourselves more capable at the end of 2026 of affording what has become a budget that is at best balanced and sometimes slightly deficit for this. So, increasing our ability to meet the needs of our citizens while staying within our tax base, and not taking on debt to the extent possible. That said, I noticed that you mentioned community outreach as part of your project. Is that included in that base cost that you provided to us? Okay.
Oh, yeah. And
because
we've been pretty successful in engaging the business and the nonprofit community on these engagements to help find out where the money should be spent, and establishing some, I'll just call them relief funds, a $1 million relief fund for downtown businesses, for capital improvements, of up to, say, $25,000 or something like that, where, they can do facade improvements, or they can buy capital equipment, or they can continue to renovate their businesses to allow for more outdoor dining and things like that help reduce the risk of spread of COVID. A couple of the programs that we've been involved with, some of the businesses have used it to replace their HVAC systems, to improve the ventilation in places. So, I think part of what we bring as well is that perspective of working with 15 different localities around the country and bringing some of the innovative programs that they've brought to bear, as suggestions, and then tweaking them to meet the needs of the community of the cities or the counties that we're working with.
I think that would be exceptionally helpful. And I'm not really sure that we had thus far really conceptualized community input as part of the economic development process, but I'm not sure why we hadn't, because of course I think that one of the many outreaches that one should do when you're looking at what will best serve your community is, of course, asking your community.
Yeah.
So,
Madam Chair, I'll just warn you that there will be plenty of brilliant ideas that come up from the community once that gets opened up. Just by way of reference, when we did this in Bristol, Bristol has $29 million. When they opened it up, they got over 150 applications that came in worth $84 million that we then had to winnow down and funnel down into, they wanted to do no more than 24 million. in the first round of funding so that they had some squirreled away for brilliant ideas that were going to come up this time next year, that they would
Right.
kick themselves if they'd committed all of the funding at that time. So that was a fun process to funnel all of those down through that, and you'll get some great ideas.
Right. And you won't be able to fund them anyway. That's how it goes.
Right. That's right.
Yeah, I don't think we're thinking anything anywhere near that scope, but I think nonetheless, it would be good to solicit input from the nonprofit community, the business community, and the community at large as to what they think we should be doing to encourage economic activity. I don't know, Randy and Eric, how you feel about that, but that struck me as perhaps a valuable tool to have in the arsenal. Okay.
I would agree.
Okay. Anyway, your proposal is certainly exciting, Mr. Reagan. Are there other comments or questions from members of the Finance Committee?
I don't have any at this point.
Okay. Or from anybody else out there, I was going to say. If there aren't, I think that we will need to continue to have a robust discussion about this with the full body of council. Mr. Reagan, will you be able to attend our council meeting on Thursday as well?
Be there with bells on Thursday night.
He's
Fantastic.
actually coming in person.
Yep.
Chairperson.
Wonderful.
That's lovely. That'd be great. Okay, well, we'll look forward to meeting you then in person. We're likely to retread a lot of the discussions we've already had again on Thursday, and I don't see the point of belaboring this discussion any further, given that I'm sure that we'll go into great detail then as well. But thank you. I've enjoyed the discussion and found it to be exceptionally informational so far. And we'll look forward to Thursday.
Yep.
Gentlemen, one of you like to propose that we forward this to the full body of council?
I would like to propose that we forward this to the full body of council with a positive recommendation.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Randy, you saying aye too? I didn't catch that for the record. Okay. That looked like an aye. All right.
It's a lukewarm eye, Randy. Come on.
Yeah. He's waiting to ask more questions on Thursday. Randy.
I'll wear the bulletproof armor. Don't worry.
Randy's our thinker. Anyway, we got to have one. Bare minimum, right, Randy? Anyway. All right. Thank you very much then, Mr. Reagan, and we'll see you Thursday night. Okay. Moving on to the next item on our agenda, Mr. Pavlak. Item number 5, a resolution to approve a landlord certification waiver and I can never remember how you pronounce this, Estopel agreement.
Yeah,
Mr.
this is an agreement between the city, the redevelopment authority, and West 3rd Street Partners for their lease of the property currently housing the AMC Theater, formerly the Biter Block. This is the 3rd agreement that we've entered into of this type. And basically, from my understanding and speaking with the manager for the property, they're looking to refinance their debt on their property with the construction of the building. So part of that, the new bank that they're looking to refinance with is asking for a revised agreement. So we've had this reviewed by the city solicitor. There were really no changes from the last agreement that was approved back in 2014, I believe. And we're bringing it forward for city council's approval.
Okay. So just for clarification, we're pretty much just updating this agreement to make it current.
We're updating the agreement to reflect the new bank.
Oh, the new owner.
That the West 3rd Street Partners is looking to refinance with. I think that they're going to, I don't have it in front of me right now. I can have it for Thursday, but they're switching banks and they're refinancing their outstanding debt. To my knowledge, they're not taking anything out additional. I think that the last agreement, there may have been, they were refinancing to, I think, separate 2 of the theaters, but I didn't hear of anything like that as part of this revision.
Got it. Okay. Randy, Eric, questions?
No, that sounds pretty standard, and especially if the solicitor reviewed it and no changes really made.
Me either.
Okay. Yeah. All right, then I would take a motion.
I'll make a motion, we pass it to full body of council with a positive recommendation.
I will second that.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Randy, for some reason, we're not catching eyes. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Pavlik. Well, you got off easy today. All right. Item number 6. Yes, sorry.
Were you asking me a question?
For some reason, I keep not hearing your eyes, and I'm not sure why.
Oh, okay.
Maybe you're hitting mute or
I'll
something.
say yes.
Yeah.
I'll go with yes.
I mean, I suppose it doesn't really matter to me, Randy, but it might matter in terms of the record. That was my only thought, was if Janice was recording and all two of us said aye, and I wasn't asking for a nay. So I guess, by the way, if you would, if you need a space for a nay, holler, or I can remember to ask for that too. Item number 6, a resolution to approve the partnership agreement between the city and Rec Desk for a purchase of software. Ms. Drummond?
This was on the agenda for council back, oh goodness, supposed to be on the 3rd, but I was sick, so I was out. On the agenda prior to that, it was asked to come back to finance and to council due to the payment portion of it, how we accept payments. So we're still going through a Rec Desk, and it would be called Governed Portal. That's the company that works with Rec Desk to process payments online as well as in person to make the payments with a credit card or debit card. Their fee is incorporated into Rec Desk fees, so it's no fee. We could either pick up when you make an online payment or a credit card or debit card payment on site. We'll say, example, for the pool. People come in, want to pay for admission. If they swipe their card, we could pass that processing fee to them as a 3% fee.
Okay, so there's an additional fee, but we can pass it to the user, is what you're saying.
Everything else we do not pay for. It's a part of the original pricing for Rec Desk.
Got it. Okay. So, and the process of passing the fee on to the user is as simple as posting notice that we charge a 3% service fee for our credit cards. Okay.
Yes.
Complex than that. Got it. And the fee is static at 3%?
Correct.
No reason why it would be higher for, there's no reason for a higher fee for any. Okay, good.
No.
Okay. Gentlemen, or did you have anything else to say, Kayla? I'm sorry. I probably cut you off.
The only thing I have is that if we go ahead and move forward, Rec Desk is willing to start training on my end and starting to try to implement what I would like onto the site as early as this week, possibly next week.
Okay, terrific. Then Randy, Eric, do you have questions?
I do not.
I do not either.
Okay. Thank you for taking care of this, Kayla. I'm glad we found the vendor that can pass that charge along. Because clearly, with relatively low recreation revenues, one way or the other, I don't think we want them to go lower. Can we also, like, vendor fees and things like that?
Absolutely.
This platform? Okay, good. So any charges we were taking would go,
Absolutely.
could or the one other note that I would make is the city should think about its policy on personal checks in light of accepting credit card payments. There's been a bit of a resurgence in interest in personal checks because they don't carry any fee.
Right.
If we are, I mean, I would assume from a vendor, we would accept a personal check, but
Absolutely.
would we take a personal check for, do we require ID, et cetera, to take a personal check for pool entrance, pool fees, all that. But
ironically enough, I don't have a lot of personal checks being written. It's usually a money order, or they're like, well, can I pay online? Especially with my vendors now this time of the year that all my applications are going out, they want that ability to be able to fill out the application, send it back to me, and make the payment all at one time.
No, and I think most people will want to do that, but there are people who will be like,
Yeah.
oh, wait, extra.
Absolutely.
If I pay with a credit card, well, then let me do this,
Absolutely. And an ID is required if you hand us a personal check. So
got it. Okay, all right, good. I'm glad we've got a policy then. All right, yeah, then I don't have any further questions. This looks great and it's exciting to be able to get started as early as this week, so.
Yeah.
Okay, I would take a vote then. That's a motion.
I'd like to pass this on to the full body of council with a positive recommendation.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Yes.
Aye.
Okay,
But
thank you, Randy. All right, then the next item on our agenda is item number 7, a resolution to authorize the submission of the CLG fiscal year 2022 project grant application to the PA SHPO, Pennsylvania State Historic Preservation Office. Sorry, the acronyms drive me nuts sometimes. Mr. Memmi?
Good afternoon again, everybody. We're coming to you today to discuss the potential resolution to allow the Department of Community and Economic Development to submit a grant application to as Certified Local Government Grant Program of the SHPO, Pennsylvania State Historic Museum Commission, for $25,000. The use of the grant funding will be to modernize the historic district program. The authorization for the HARB was written, I believe, in 1975. We're looking to rewrite that ordinance, and then also to the way the process is implemented to allow certain things to happen that could happen administratively and not delay the projects 30 to 60 days. So we're trying to improve it. We're trying to make it faster. We're trying to make it more reactive to the needs of the individuals that reside within the HARB district.
Mm-hmm.
I'll try to answer any questions.
Okay. Thank you, Skip. Randy and Eric?
Yeah, I don't have any questions. I think it looks like it'd be a nice grant to get and use for. I think it coincides with, new blood on the HARB board and more focus on the historical preservation area, and gives more incentive to for us to get the historical preservation committee up and running again.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's absolutely true, Randy.
Yeah.
Eric, anything from you?
No, nothing at this time.
Okay. Just to be clear, Skip, the $2,500 match is coming from where if we receive the grant?
That's still a question yet to be determined.
Okay.
EBD.
ARPA funds, in other words. We know it's not coming from community development, I believe.
So, I can't use CDBG or home funds for it now.
Got it. Okay. And when will we hear about the grant application if we'd received it?
The grant deadline is April 11th. That's kind of why we're kind of rushing this along. And if it's awarded, the timeline to the grant expenditure timeline starts July 1st, 2022.
So within the next month or so, we'd hear about the. Okay.
And the gentleman, Mr. Frank Grumbine from the SHPO, recommended that we apply for this grant.
Yeah, I saw that. So what is the grant? What is the timeline for expenditure if it starts in July of 2022?
September 29th of 23.
Okay. I guess the only reason I ask is that means, it's only $2,500 and I know that, but we would need to find it this budget year, not wait to put it in the 2022 budget. So there's that to be considered. Anyway, clearly this is a positive thing. My only other questions are about process. I'm assuming that obviously any amendments to any ordinances or anything like that would come before city council for a vote. Will it also go before HARB for review?
Absolutely. Yes.
All right, just wanted to make sure. Obviously, when we're considering developing design guidelines for more modern materials that weren't available in 1975, I think we would need the input of HARB to make certain that we were being fair to them. You know what I mean?
There was a vote of the HARB board to allow us to submit this if city council would do the resolution.
Great. Well, that's excellent. All right. Well, this would certainly make a big difference. Would we be doing the updates in-house then if we receive the funding? Or I'm assuming?
The intention is to retain a consultant to assist with that process. We'll be involved from our office, but a lot of this is going to take someone that has a certain level of expertise that we do not have. Got it.
Okay. Excellent. All right. Then this is exciting. It's certainly high time. The maximum grant amount is 25,000, I assume.
Yes, that's it.
And I'm assuming that none of that money can go toward like digitizing records or anything else that would help us.
The way it's been discussed is we would go through this process, and then as it evolves, we could go after other grant funding for some of those things like digitizing of records and other types of added issues that we need to implement within the program using other grant funds from the
start. So the consultant would theoretically make recommendations for other things we could do to bring our program into the modern era, while being mindful of the prior eras, and then we could go after for the grant right in a historically sensitive fashion. Okay, excellent. That's all that I have. So if there are no other questions from anyone out there, I would take a motion.
I'll make a motion. We pass this to the full body of council with a positive recommendation.
And I will second that.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Thank you, Randy. All right. It must be something about my speaker today or something. Okay, then the only remaining item on our agenda is any related items. Mr. Pavlik, I don't think we're prepared to review any financial documents today. Is there anything else that anyone wanted to bring up for the good of the order? Hearing nothing. Mr. Pavlik, I did not look at them, but did I see end of year numbers in our inboxes like a week or so ago?
Not for me.
Okay, then I must have just been daydreaming. All right, never mind then. I thought I'd seen something go past me and I thought I should put it on
you. You're muted, Liz.
I don't know how I do that, but I'll do that again. If you do have any, first quarter or end of year numbers coming for us, Mr. Pavlik, please just add them onto the agenda yourself, or kind of give me a heads up about it, I suppose, so that I know to do it. And if there are no other related items, we are currently only 6 minutes over time, and I would take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Would you like to second that, Mr.
Second.
Beck?
Yeah, sorry. Second.
Okay. Oh, that's fine. I just never know.